Hello and welcome to The Switch. This is the series where we speak to inspirational people about big turning points in their lives and how we can all position ourselves for success. I'm G Footit and I'm lucky enough to quiz these people about the precise mix of skills, behaviours, traits and sheer grit that has got them to the top of their game. I'm interested in those pivotal points in their lives, the light bulb moments that propel them to a new level, and find out what it was that convinced these remarkable people that it was the right decision for them. Join us for this week's episode, Build Your Own Treehouse, as we look at successfully navigating your way through not only a dream career move, but a deeper level of personal fulfilment. Our guest will talk about her own journey from career anxiety to recognising her calling and striking out on her own to become a source of inspiration for others in their own career progression and performance development. But importantly, the switch is also about you, our listeners. Are you content with your life, your career? Are you considering making the switch of your own? Maybe you're looking for a new direction or the motivation to take that crucial step. Whatever your situation, we hope that you'll take inspiration from this show. And as the series continues, we'd love to take your questions for our future guests. So to introduce myself, I work for the UK's largest provider of face-to-face financial advice, St James's Place. I'm involved in our academy, which has so far trained over 1,300 financial advisors. And these are people from all walks of life that decided to make a switch of their own. To inspire others to do the same, we're talking to extraordinary leaders across entertainment, sport, psychology, and in this episode, a trailblazing advocate for career fulfilment and flexible working. I'm joined today by Natasha Stanley. Natasha is a career change consultant extraordinaire, training and development innovator, and experience designer, helping businesses, teams, and individuals communicate and connect better. Following her bachelor's degree in politics and sociology at Bristol University, Natasha spent several years working for non-profit and charity organisations in community building and outreach programmes. Natasha then refocused and made moves to create a role as a business and communications consultant, supporting and inspiring small businesses and entrepreneurs to find their focus and clarity. Alongside this work, Natasha aligned with Careershifters as an independent consultant, head coach and experience designer. Careershifters is a company who supports individuals with career development, career change, leadership coaching and performance. In 2017, she founded and continues to run her human connection operation, This Is For You, offering transformative workshops, retreats and bespoke experiences. Natasha is a self-proclaimed intellectual magpie, digital nomad and remote working champion, and is currently working on a book about wonder, all of which we will hear about during this episode. Natasha, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on The Switch.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this.
So for many of our guests, we discussed their own significant direction shift, but Natasha, the switch you made was to support others in their own switch. So there's a lot of added insight and perspective that you can share with us today. So we're delighted to have you on the show. But first, we should get to know a little bit more about you. So to start with, we know you're a big advocate for remote working. So tell us where you're working from today.
So right now I'm on this call with you from the Scottish Highlands, just over the bridge from the Isle of Skye, where I've just moved actually just a couple of weeks ago, where I was previously living in the Canary Islands.
Wow. And so that's a bit of a temperature change, I would imagine.
Temperature change, culture change, yeah, the whole shebang. I'm still landing a little bit right now.
Absolutely. And what was the reason behind this move for you?
It just felt like time. You know, I'd spent a long time living in the Canaries, longer than I've actually ever lived anywhere in my life. And I could feel something in me that was telling me it was time for something new. And over the years, I've learned to listen to that, sometimes sooner, sometimes later than I should have. But yeah, I was ready for some new challenges, a new environment and a new lifestyle, I think.
Wow. And why not the Scottish Highlands? Absolutely beautiful.
There's worse places, right?
So in working as a digital nomad, what is it that you value most about that?
You know, it's funny because I don't connect very much with the term digital nomad. I've always found it a little bit uncomfortable, particularly over the last number of years where I've become much more of what's known as a slowmad. So someone who moves much more slowly than digital nomads are known to move. And honestly, where I feel I'm at in my life right now is much more seeking stability and a sense of home. That wasn't always the case for me. And part of why I entered that kind of lifestyle was this real hunger for freedom and adventure and finding a way to be able to support myself while I lived that kind of a life. Living that kind of location independent lifestyle gave me that sense of autonomy, that sense of freedom, and the ability to really have people talk about work-life balance. For me, it was much more about work-life integration and alignment. Like, how do I have my work support the life that I want to live, and vice versa?
Amazing. And so what sort of steps did you put in place to make that possible for you?
Oh, I mean, it was a bit of a disaster, to be honest. When I look back at it, I went in with no idea what I was doing. I started working remotely and living this kind of lifestyle way before the term digital nomad, I think, was even really a thing. I remember reading about a woman called Leah Woodward who coined the term location independence. And of course, this was back in kind of the 2010s, and technology wasn't what it is now. There were far, far fewer people living this kind of lifestyle. And so I sort of bombed into it sideways. I'd left my old career. I didn't know what else I wanted to do with my life yet, but I did know that I wanted my work to be able to support a life of travel and adventure and exploration. And so I started seeking out people who were living and working in this way already, starting to have conversations with them and looking at ways that I could support myself while I got a location independent income off the ground.
Fantastic. So many tangible things that people can think about doing themselves there. And now, obviously, we have been through the pandemic and working remotely has become much more accepted and normal. Do you feel like this is something that maybe more people could or should do?
It's absolutely something that more people could do. I'm always very, very wary of saying that anybody should do it because it's absolutely not for everybody. There's a lot of beauty to it. There's a lot of adventure to it. And the reality is it's almost, for a lot of people, I think, almost like having two full-time jobs, because as soon as you arrive in a new place, it's not just, oh, I'm going to get a cocktail and sit on the beach with my laptop. You know, you've got to find Wi-Fi, you've got weird Airbnbs, you've got the wrong kind of plug socket, you don't know where the co-working space is. You have to set yourself up in a new place every time that you move. You're navigating visas and time zone differences, and it's a lot of not very glamorous stuff in order to support this kind of very beautiful, exciting looking lifestyle. And for some people, it's not a fit. It's not something that feels good. And for me, a lot of the reason why I shifted to more of the kind of slowmad life, feeling a real lack of community. I was meeting incredible people all the time who were up to some really amazing things. And then we were saying goodbye over and over again. And honestly, I got lonely. And for people for whom community and connection and a sense of belonging is really important, this is not the lifestyle for you, you know? That said, I'm really clear that for that chapter in my life, it was exactly right for where I was at. And so if somebody is out there thinking, I feel like I'm in a chapter of my life where this is what's needed or desired, there has never been a better time to do it than now.
Absolutely. And I love what you said earlier around just listening to yourself and acting on those impulses, that inner voice maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not easy to do, you know, particularly for people who have spent a lot of their lives listening to other people's voices and other people's opinions and the shoulds and the woulds and the whatabouts. Trusting that sense of, okay, there's something for me to listen to here is scary. And a lot of us are very out of practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So aside from working in exotic locations, from your early life, did you see any signs of where your career path might take you? When did you start to think, I know what I want to be when I grow up?
You know, it's funny. Certainly my early career in the charity sector, doing frontline support with vulnerable groups, when I look back, is an entirely logical progression. You know, my mother was an artist. My father, in my early years, was working in race relations. So my first experience of the working world was sitting on his desk at the Camden Racial Equality Council, surrounded by lawyers working on the aftermath of the Stephen Lawrence case. I grew up with this very strong sense of social justice and advocating for people whose voices are unheard or not valued. And I toyed with ideas of, like, I wanted to be an actress. I did a stint with the National Youth Theatre. I wanted to work with horses. And funnily enough, I've done all of those things in my career since. But I think that line towards the charity sector and social justice and social enterprise was pretty clearly laid out for me since I was very, very small.
I love that. And whereabouts did you grow up?
London and surrounds. We moved around a fair bit when I was little. I was born in Hammersmith. Moved around kind of Crouch End, Turnpike Lane, those kinds of areas. And then on the outskirts of London through my teen years until I went to Bristol for university.
Lovely. And what was family life like?
Family life was, well, it was many things. As I said, my mother was an artist. She's a sculptor. And so there was a lot of creativity going on in the house, a lot of painting. I remember being pulled down to her studio at kind of 2 o'clock in the morning. She was like, come and sit here and put your arms up for me so I can see what these kinds of muscles do. She was a very creative and playful being. My dad, far more grown up and solid and that kind of energy. So I like to think I got a pretty good balance of those things. And school was always something that I enjoyed, moved around quite a lot, so changed schools quite a lot. And in some ways that wasn't ideal, but in other ways, I think it taught me a lot of skills in terms of how to be with people, how to develop relationships with people, how to chameleon in different situations.
Yeah, really interesting. And so your early career took you to the third sector, working with charities and community organisations. Back then, I guess that sort of felt right, which is great. But did you have an eye on what was next on your longer term career?
Yeah, I thought I'd hit the jackpot when I left university and got my first job with The Big Issue. I thought, that's it, I'm in, I've done it. And I really didn't have a longer term goal at all. I was still kind of finding my feet in the world of work, figuring out which way was up. And I had a sense that where I was in that particular organisation wasn't going to be it for me, but I wasn't quite sure where in that sector was going to be right. And so I did a fair amount of job hopping in those early years of my career, working with the homeless community. Then I went to run domestic violence refuges. I worked with street-based sex workers, kind of hopping around trying to find the right fit in that sector, which I think was probably the earliest sign that actually a bigger shift was necessary.
But fascinating roles and challenging roles by the sound of things. What sort of talents and skills were you discovering that you had by doing work with those organisations?
It's funny, I think the talents and skills I was discovering that I had were the ones that I was realizing I wasn't getting to use.
Really interesting.
So I was super excited to be in that environment. And I very quickly realized that the reality of the work that I was doing was not what I had imagined it to be. So I'm thinking specifically of one environment where I was working for a domestic violence support service. And within a month of joining their team, I was running 3 separate refuges with a caseload of 18 families. It was bureaucracy, it was paperwork, it was battling with the council, it was applying for people's benefits with them, all this kind of logistical paperwork, keeping balls in the air kind of thing, which I now know is the absolute polar opposite of what I'm good at. Like, you want success out of me, give me something as far as possible from that. And I was very, very quickly incredibly stressed, incredibly tired, really worried all the time. But there was one afternoon a week where I got to work on the helplines. And that afternoon felt like an absolute balm for my soul. And it wasn't an easy thing, right? You're picking up the phone to women in some horrendous situations. For many of them, it's the first time they've ever talked to anybody about what they're living through. And yet I loved it. And I used to get comments from people in the team around me about how good I was on the phones with these women, listening to them, having them feel seen and heard and understood and supported. And it was that contrast between what my normal day-to-day was and then this little pocket every week where I suddenly felt myself coming to life that I really got clear, wow, like I don't know if I can continue doing the reality of what this frontline work looks like, because it's not what I thought it was. And it turns out it's really not what I'm good at.
That's so fascinating. So some really key lessons learned. And I think from a young age, you've been good at listening to yourself, because I feel like many people, like you say, that they feel fortunate to have the role. That maybe it was the dream role that they had. They've got there and maybe wouldn't listen to those warning signs and just plod along, I suppose. So I feel like, but at the time, did you recognize that in yourself?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's very easy for me to sit here and talk about it with
in retrospect,
in hindsight on my shoulder, right? But at the time, I was absolutely lost and confused. I was beating myself up constantly for not being good at the things that I thought that I should be good at. Why can't I get this together? Why can't I be good at this? I'm letting everybody down. Maybe I'm destined to just never enjoy work. The thought that I was in the wrong place, using the wrong skill set, hadn't fully occurred to me. I was just drowning, quite frankly. And
Yeah.
that's a big part of why I did the job hopping that I did, was because I kept feeling myself sliding under the surface. And I thought, okay, well, maybe if I put myself in a different company or a different organization, I'll be able to breathe again. But it kept following me, that sensation, until it reached the point where I really had to do something about it.
So interesting. And I think people listening will resonate with that description a lot. You know, that feeling of drowning, maybe. I feel like maybe some will sound familiar to people. So thank you for sharing. So could you give a bit of an explanation around what you do now in your role with Careershifters and in your independent consulting? Because I'm fascinated.
Yeah, totally. So with Careershifters, we help people find and move into more fulfilling work. And we do that through workshops, courses, lots of free online content on our website, masterclasses, all that kind of good stuff. I, as you said in your introduction to me, think of myself as a bit of an intellectual magpie. So I've got my fingers in lots of different parts of the Careershifters world. But a lot of what I do is content creation. So I write a lot of our expert articles. I design and run some of our courses. So the Career Change Launchpad I created with my colleagues Richard and Sab back in 2013. That's now in its 11th year of running. And a lot of my work is really about listening and responding. I think that's 99% of what I do is I listen to the people that we work with as closely as I can, whether that's while we're delivering courses or workshops or whether it's in interviews. And I help career shifters to create things that really meet them where they're at, not just where we think they're at, and that support them to learn the tools and techniques that really work to find a more fulfilling career, which is often we found the polar opposite of what we're taught to do. So that's a big part of what I do with career shifters. And then what I really love about my work with career shifters is how much it supports me to dip my toe into all of the other things that I'm interested in. So as I was doing the digital nomad thing, as I was feeling lonely and that lack of community, I got really curious about the question, what is authentic human connection, like the art of it and the science of it, and how do I learn as much as I can about what it takes to build really meaningful, authentic human relationships in personal lives and in the business context, and how can I facilitate that and teach people how to do that as well, which is where another strand of my working bow lives. So working with companies and teams and whoever wants to hang out really to help explore those questions for them.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you work with lots of different organizations. So how did you come to be involved with Career Shifters?
That was kind of after my breaking point with the charity sector. So I reached a point where the situation I was in was just untenable. I was waking up in the mornings, and before I'd even opened my eyes, I'd have tears streaming down my face at the thought of going to work. I felt like an absolute shell of myself. I was tired all the time. And it reached a point where I didn't know what else I wanted to do. I felt so out of touch with who I was and what I enjoyed. And I didn't know how to trust myself to make the right choice again, because I'd been so phenomenally wrong this time around. Like, talk about trusting in your inner voice. I'd lost that entirely because I'd made such a huge mistake, in inverted commas. So I did the only thing that I knew to do, which was cut and run. I quit my job. I put my house on the market. I booked a one-way flight to Greece because it turns out that's how I deal with stress. And I spent a number of months working on a horse ranch up in the Greek mountains and reading as much as I could about lifestyle design and career change and psychology and behavioral psychology. And along that path of reading and exploring this world that I was curious about for myself, I found a number of people who were up to some really cool stuff in that space. And I didn't know how to do what they were doing, but I knew that they knew because they were doing it. So I sat down and I sent an email to 10 of the most interesting people who were doing work in that area. And I said really honestly, like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm at a real crossroads. I don't know where I want to head next. But the one thing I do know is there's something in what you're doing that is really lighting me up. And I'd love to find out more about it. Like, do you have time to just hop on a call and tell me more about you? And 9 out of 10 of those people got back to me. There were some pretty big names at the time. I did not expect responses. And one of those people was Richard Alderson, who's the founder of Careershifters. We hopped on a call and kept talking and kept talking and kept talking. And at the end of it, we kind of came away like, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something that could get created out of this conversation. And it did.
Fantastic. And we'll come back to your pivotal moment in a minute. But I love how you framed that message out to those people. And like you say, some big names, but it's all about how you frame the message. And actually, in my experience, when you ask people for help, generally people like to help other people. It's sort of naturally inbuilt in us, but I feel like often people have the fear and they feel they'll get rejection, so they just don't do it. They don't try. So now you are working with career shifters. What form does the coaching take, and who do you typically work with in your work with them?
Yeah, so we work with anybody who is feeling unfulfilled in their current career and wants to find something that fits them better. And that really does range. So we often get people from the media approaching us saying, like, what are the rubbish industries, the places that everybody's trying to get away from? And the truth is we have people coming from education, from marketing, from law, from admin, from all over the place, simply because for one reason or another, they're in a career that just doesn't suit them anymore. Yeah. Maybe it never did, maybe it's changed. And we work with them primarily to teach them the tools and approaches that really work for a sideways move. The world of work and recruitment and everything we're taught about business is all designed for up, but nobody's teaching you how to do sideways. And so a lot of people come to us and they say, I have been throwing all of my best problem solving skills at this issue. I'm smart, I'm switched on, I get paid to solve problems, but I cannot solve this one. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them. It's just because they're running up the down escalator. Like what works for sideways doesn't work for up, and vice versa. So that's what we really focus on. And what we see is that increasingly the world of work is fast changing. It's more and more likely that people are going to make multiple shifts in their lifetime. And so we really want to equip people with the confidence and the tools to be able to do this at any point in their lives, not just the time they come to us.
That is fascinating and resonating. And I'm sure many people listening will feel the same. And another term of phrase that you have used, which I haven't heard frequently or maybe even ever before, is experience design. So tell us about that part of your job.
I love this stuff. Like essentially what's at the core of it for me is if people come to you at point A, how do you get them to point B in the most effective and human and nourishing way possible? So how do you design an experience for somebody that makes the outcomes that you want for them and that they want almost inevitable? And so this comes down to really small things like the design of our website. It comes down to the phrases and terminology that we use as coaches and facilitators and that I train our team in. How do you answer questions in a way that facilitates that growth in the people that we're working with? Any part of the experience of somebody that comes to us, it's all about how do we design this in a way that gets them to where they want to be with the least pain and drama and suffering possible.
I mean, this sounds absolutely amazing that you can help people and navigate them through these challenges with helping them have a degree of confidence in what they're doing. That makes such a big difference. And it feels like it's a highly skilled role that you play. So were there qualifications or learning on the job? Did you have natural ability? How have you got these amazing coaching skills?
Yeah, so I am super open about the fact that, first of all, I've never had a job I was qualified for. And secondly, I don't have any formal qualifications in coaching or facilitation. And that's really important to some people, so I'm very open about it. But everything that I do, I've learned either through listening to and responding to the people that we work with, or I think through a fairly natural skill set. Again, like growing up, I think I developed an ability to listen to what's being said, but also listen to what's not being said. I developed an ability to facilitate situations and groups in ways that created ease and calm. A lot of that in family situations, also in school situations. So a lot of it, I think, is inbuilt. But what I come back to time and time again is, what are the people that I'm here to serve telling me? through what they're saying, through what they're doing, through what they're refusing to do. And that, for me, I don't think there's any greater teacher than really listening to the people that I'm here to take care of and responding to where they're at.
And I guess from what you've just said, a high degree of emotional intelligence, or EQ, as we call it, naturally, and then just honing those skills by working with other experts and really listening to the person in front of you.
Yeah, totally.
Fantastic. And you run Bespoke Experiences. This is for you. Tell us about those.
This is kind of a side project that ebbs and flows over the years, but essentially I work with teams, companies, groups who want to build more authentic connections. So I do a lot of team building stuff for companies and organizations. And with those, it's really about how do we develop the confidence in teams to be able to say what's not being said? How do we get to show up as our authentic selves at work and know that that's going to be received in a supportive and open and welcoming way? And how do we get to know one another and learn how to communicate with one another, perhaps at a deeper level than we're accustomed to doing, either in a workplace or in a community group or whatever environment we might happen to be in? And I try to bring the whole experience design world to that as well and make it as tailored and appropriate as possible.
Fantastic. And is there much demand for, I guess, both that work and career shifters? Who do you find yourself most engaged with?
I spend most of my time on career shifters. That's where my primary focus is. With authentic human connection, doesn't have a very clear ROI in the business world. So I tend to be working primarily with companies and organizations who already have fulfillment at work as a real priority for them. And so then they seek out these kinds of experiences. And there's quite a nice marriage there, or an overlap between those parts of my work, of organizations that are interested in having fulfilled teams, and then finding fulfilling work for those individuals who might be looking for those kinds of companies on the career shifter side. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there who aren't happy in their work. And so fortunately or unfortunately, there's kind of a never-ending stream of people coming to us at Career Shifters saying, do you know what, I think I need some help.
And I do think the pandemic plays into that a bit, because people had time at home. They could work from home. And then suddenly everyone's been like pushed back towards the office, and they're thinking, well, actually, that suited me better. That's just one example. But you mentioned in terms of sort of commerciality, ROI. So how are the measures of success for some of that work then that doesn't necessarily have a tangible return on investment? How do you measure the success?
So that will vary from organisation or company or group to group. And I usually set that out with people at the start of our conversations. Like, what does this look like for you? What is the ROI that you're looking for, and how will we know that it's set up? And so for some people, it's engagement ratings and that kind of thing, like how engaged do people feel at work? How comfortable do they feel speaking up in meetings? What are relationships with colleagues like outside of the workplace? And for others, there is a kind of churn conversation to be had. And this is over longer engagements. Are we keeping people? Are they staying or are they leaving? Are they coming to me at Career Shifters saying, hey,
yeah,
something different?
No, it's fascinating. Great. I love that. So it's really dependent on what they're looking for, and you help them to achieve this. So we're at the point in the show where we usually look at that light bulb moment, which we've spoken about a little bit already, but let's delve into it a little bit more. So we've called this Build Your Own Treehouse, because while you've literally lived and worked from a treehouse before, it felt like an apt description for our theme, i.e. creating a space for you and putting your own unique needs, ambition and comfort at the centre of your life and your career path. So you said somewhere that it felt like initially when you were thinking of changing careers, you jumped around within the charity sector a lot, and it felt like you were kicking that can a bit down the road. So how did you make that transition, and what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome when you finally did it?
I think the biggest challenge that I had to overcome was taking action in the face of uncertainty. And this is something that we talk about and we teach and we work with clients at Career Shifters around a lot, because I was certainly raised with the idea of like, set a goal and work towards it. Eyes on the prize, know where you're going before you begin. And what I really had to do was say, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm beginning anyway. And that is really scary, particularly when it's in an area of your life that's connected to survival. and putting a roof over your head and paying the bills. And I didn't have any dependents at the time. I was just thinking about me. But for people who do have a mortgage and small humans to keep alive, like at 80, to be like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going anyway. So that was really scary for me, was leaving my job without anything to go to, without even a hunch about what it was that I wanted to do. But I'd got to a point where I realized there's only so many self-help books that I can read. I've been making lists of my strengths and weaknesses and things that I could do for the past 2 years probably, and it's essentially the same list over and over and over again. And what I'm doing up till now of trying to figure this out isn't working. So I'm going to need to do something about it and trust that as I start to act, I'll start to gather data and information and things that I need to know along the way. And that was really scary and completely unfamiliar to the way that I'd been taught to navigate everything in my life. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge.
Amazing. And I love that you decided to, like you say, put one foot in front of the other before even knowing what that end path, even the direction it was traveling in. So you mentioned earlier that you did some, I suppose you might call it outreach to some people that sparked your interest, and Richard at Careershifters was one of those people. So what were the roles that some of the other people on your list that you reached out to that they were doing? What other things were sparking your interest?
Yeah, I mean, it was primarily people in this kind of space because I was interested in it for myself. There were authors of books that I had loved, some of whom I now count as friends, which I think is hilarious. There were people who were running other online businesses around location independence, for example, but also around entrepreneurship and starting businesses. There was a guy that ran a big event over in the US, bringing together innovators and creators and people who ran their own businesses together to network and connect and build community. There was a woman who ran retreats for people to spend, I think it was 5 days at a time, hill walking and talking about the stuff that was going on in their lives. So combining that physical movement with mental movement, that was fascinating to me. All of it kind of pulled in the direction of the world of work and creating a life that was aligned with who you are. I just didn't quite know where my place in all of that was going to fit, or even if it was going to fit. I just knew that was the one thing that was sparking something for me.
Amazing. And I guess after those connections and conversations with people, you connected with Richard. How soon did you realize that actually what you were looking for, you could help others with, and that could be your career path?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure that it was at any point early on. I was just excited and grateful to be in a space where I could immerse myself in this thing that had caught my attention. I started out with Careershifters in a very small way, doing little bits of copywriting here and there because I had some writing background and some copywriting background-ish. As I said, I've never had a job I was qualified for. And it was through this kind of iterative process of do this small project here, do that slightly bigger project there, that I started to notice, the things that I'm doing are landing. Whatever it is that I'm bringing is having some sort of an impact with our readers, with the other team members, of whom there were only 2 at the time. Careershifters were very small. So it was a very slow and iterative process. But I remember in those early days, I was just thrilled to be getting paid even a small amount to hang out with people who knew more about this subject than I did, who could teach me things and stretch me in ways that I hadn't been stretched in a long time. And that was really the space I was in for quite a long time, I think, in the early days.
And so I guess the question that follows that is, at what point did you realize you've made the right decision, I guess, to follow this as your career? How long would you say it took, roughly?
It's really interesting. It's not something that I've thought about before. I think I had a pretty good hunch of it within the first couple of months.
Yeah, that's good to know.
That this was something that I wanted more of. I certainly don't think at the time, and I'm not sure I still believe it now even, that there is a right thing, there is a right answer. For me, certainly, I know that there could be 100 different things that I could turn my hand to and really get a lot out of and make a positive impact around. And that was kind of what was guiding me was, is this energizing me? Does this feel good? Am I learning and growing in the ways that I want to? And I think that happened fairly early on. The question of whether I could really make a big impact in it was still kind of far off, but it felt good moment to moment. And that was enough for me, I think.
That's amazing. And that, if you compare that to how you were feeling in the previous sector, the tiredness and feeling drained and everything else. So that one must have been a big shining light in the right direction.
Yeah, completely.
And now obviously you specialize in helping others for them to grow professionally. What traits did you lead into, or do you help them with to help them develop and move forwards?
Yeah, so one that we've touched on already is the ability to take action in the face of uncertainty. We've got 3 success principles that we work with at Career Shifters of not doing this alone, doing it with other people, not trying to figure out your career change, but instead acting it out, and not looking for jobs, but instead looking for people. That kind of, those 3 things underpin everything that we do. There's a lot in each one of those that people need to find confidence and stability around. So reaching out to people is really scary. Hey, can I have some of your time is a terrifying question to start asking when you haven't done it in a long time. So a lot of it is about taking action, developing relationships, finding confidence in your ability to notice what you notice and pay attention to what you pay attention to. It's a great starting point for listening to that inner voice, which we've been talking about a lot today, is just what is it that I'm drawn to? What is it that energizes me and that I can trust? And then we do a lot of work around testing and validating ideas, which is another really scary thing for people of like, what if I get it wrong? What if I pick an idea and it turns out to be a bad one? So we draw on the worlds of design thinking and innovation and entrepreneurship, and we borrow models from those worlds to be able to apply to people's ideas for what they might want to do next in their career, and give them that confidence that actually I am on the right track because I've given the wheels a good kicking and I know that this is going to work.
Fantastic. And we did some independent research recently, and I know you said before there are thousands of people out there sort of looking for these services, and it was 25% of those surveyed, which was 4,000 UK workers, wanted to change career in the next 12 months. So it just goes to show how valuable this service is that you provide and you help people navigate. So I've got a question around a common saying, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So it'll be really good to get your perspective on how you have dealt with this yourself through your career change and career transition. And then separately to that, is this something that often people come with when they come to speak to you about their own transition?
Yeah, I hear the phrase a lot. I certainly had a sense of it in my early days doing this work in career change, because I was coming to it brand new. I was writing articles on the Career Shifters website, and I was like, well, what do I know? Like I've done it ish, but who am I to be giving advice on this kind of topic? But I think what I learned very quickly, and what I share with people who come to us at Career Shifters talking about, is that for me, imposter syndrome only shows up when I'm focused on myself. And this can sound a little bit harsh to begin with, but it becomes very clear to me when I'm thinking about, what are people going to think of me? What am I going to look like? Can they tell I'm scared? What if they find out that I'm new to this? That only ever happens when I'm making it all about me. As soon as I switch my focus to, who am I here to take care of? What can I learn from them? What can I offer them? It disappears. It's just not a thing anymore. I don't care what I look like. I don't care if I've got qualifications. I don't care who might see me as a fraud. Like, that stuff is absolutely none of my business. It's really not. My business is to pay attention to the people here that I'm here to take care of and create the best results I possibly can. And as soon as I switch my focus from, oh, what about me, to what about them, imposter syndrome just disappears.
That is such a good way to think about it. Nobody's ever had that answer before. I think I've asked it quite often on the show and just in general. And I love that perspective. Thank you. I think that'd be really helpful for lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds harsh, but
we can get. I think
it's an impact for me.
I think, as you say, you're helping people navigate a period of uncertainty and take a step before they know the direction they're really going in. So there is a lot of navel gazing, I suppose. You are looking at yourself, and then you can get in your own way, can't you? Yeah. So I really like that perspective. If you're walking into a room, you're nervous about who's in that room, who can you learn from? what do they need from you, and just switch the perspective and off of yourself, and then you feel less nervous. I love it. I think that's great.
And the other part of it is, I think a lot of people talk about I have imposter syndrome when what they mean to say is I'm still a beginner, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
You're only an imposter if you're pretending to be some kind of highfalutin expert in something that you're not. If you can be open and vulnerable and be like, do you know what? I'm still a beginner at this, but here's what I have to offer. How about this? It's not imposter syndrome. That's just being a beginner. And that's a very different thing.
That's it. So like you say, open and honest at the beginning, then there's no need to have imposter syndrome. Again, I love it. So simple. Thank you. So you've talked about career change, not as being one clean, clear moment, but more of a series of maybe micro changes. So can you tell us more about this idea?
Yeah, totally. Like when I talk about my career change, it sounds like it was just one big A to B step. Like I used to work in the charity sector, and then I made a career change, and now I do what I do. It sounds delightful, but there was no one moment where I was like, okay, that's it. Now I've changed. It was thousands upon thousands of lists made and sitting on the couch and staring into the middle distance, wondering what I was going to do, and drafting an email and not sending the email, and then putting the laptop on the edge of the bed and running down the hallway to press send and gather the momentum to do it. Like, career change takes time, and the reality of it is not very sexy. It's not all jumping on top of mountains being like, I found myself, It's really not. It's, okay, I'm going to put my shoes on now to go out of the door to this interesting workshop instead of sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. Or it's, I'm going to draft the first 3 lines of this email to this person that I find inspiring, because that's all I've got time to do right now. And the people that I see make successful career changes are the ones who recognize the value of those tiny little steps and take them as often as they possibly can. A lot of people come to me and they say, oh, I want to make a career change, but I've got no spare time. And when we look at what spare time means for them, it's, I don't have a chunk of 3 hours every weekend to be able to sit down and do serious work on my career change. But actually, if you can value teeny tiny ooches forward and acknowledge them and celebrate them for this kind of exponential progress that they create, you move a lot further, a lot faster. So it's about breaking down the things that you think you have to do. And incidentally, finding your passion is not one thing. You read a lot of career change advice and it's like, step 1, find your passion. It's like, holy cats, how am I supposed to do this? Breaking it down into teeny tiny steps forward and just looking for what is the next tiny ooch in the right direction that I can take, even if I can't see the final destination right now.
I think that's fascinating. And can you tell us then a little bit more about the process? For example, on Career Shifters, you've got the Launchpad career change experience. Tell us a bit about what that looks and feels like for somebody.
Yeah, so the Launchpad is an 8-week experience. It's delivered entirely online, so we have people taking part from all over the world. And it is designed to take people and teach them the tools and techniques to move from a lack of clarity, which could be, I have no idea what I want to do next, or it could be, I've got too many ideas. That's both lack of clarity, towards clarity and confidence about what they want to do and how they're going to get there. So we put them in a community of other career changers, which for a lot of people is the first time they've ever been surrounded by a bunch of people who really get it. And we give them missions and exercises each week. So missions are things that take you out into the world, interacting with other people and your life around you. Exercises are more of the thinky, processing kind of navel-gazing stuff that people might be more accustomed to, although we do it in some unexpected ways, I'll say. And week by week, they go through the 3 stages of our career change map. So discovering, which is all about finding out what's outside of your reality bubble. Like, what are the things that you don't even know exist right now? And how do you gather fresh inspiration and ideas? Then in focusing, we help them to craft personalized career themes, which are directions that they know they'll be fulfilled if their future career lies under that kind of umbrella. And then we teach them in testing and validating a proven process for testing out your ideas to make sure before you make any big moves that you're headed into the right job or career for you. It's fun, it's playful. a lot of people show up in week 1 or week 2 being like, why are you asking us to do this? This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, I get it now. This is great. So it's a really, I hope, enjoyable experience, as well as being something that's enlightening and confidence building.
I love that. And I agree with that kind of cohort camaraderie is so helpful for people, just to be around people going through a similar thing, and for accountability too. So it works in 2 ways. It's like, oh my gosh, all these other people are doing that uncomfortable thing, the project outside or whatever it was. They've got to go and get some information from somebody other than themselves. And if everybody else is doing it, you're going to do it 10 times more likely to do it, aren't you?
Totally. That kind of cross-pollination of ideas, and accountability and inspiration. And, oh, I'm not nuts for wanting to do this. It's priceless. It really is.
Have you had any career startups from people that have met on the program?
I think we've had a few, and there's certainly people who've been through the experience like years ago and who we speak to now, and they're like, yeah, I'm still in touch with such and such or such and such from our cohort. I know that there's quite a big freelancer community that's developed out of it, who call on each other's services for different odds and sods. It's very, very cool.
Fantastic. So with all this experience, Natasha, both your own and that of everybody that you work with and help through Careershifters and all of your independent work, in your opinion, is there ever an ideal time to make a significant career change?
An ideal time? I mean, the thing that I hear from career changers who have done it all the time is the ideal time would have been about 3 years before they actually did it. But no, I think the ideal time is the time when you do it. Whenever that is, you're never going to be able to go back in time and do it sooner. If you're waiting for this perfect moment to show up at some point in the future, that's probably not coming.
You've got to create it yourself.
You've got to create it yourself. And I often think the career changers who say, oh, I wish I'd done it 3 years ago, there's often a little voice in the back of my head that's like, would you have been ready?
Yeah.
I know that there's this rush to be productive and get it right and hustle and create the life you want. And that's all brilliant. And sometimes when we're not doing something, it's because we're actually not ready to. And we have to go through more of a process of understanding why where we're at isn't right. And some people, in order to be happy in their future career, have to know, I did everything I could in that previous career to make it work. And if they jumped before they had that sensation, they'd spend the rest of their life wondering. I really think that for a lot of people, the time comes when it comes for a pretty good reason.
One of the key elements that needs to be right or in place would be their financial cushion. Is that something you help people navigate as well?
Yeah, so finances is pretty much the number one fear that career changers come to us with. A lot of it is rooted in assumptions and fears versus real data. So a lot of people come to us and they say, I can't make a career change because I haven't got a big financial cushion. And we say, well, what is it that you want to move into? And they say, well, I don't know yet. And it's almost kind of putting the cart before the horse. We're doing a big piece of research at the moment in collaboration with a think tank around the financial impact and the financial beliefs of career changes, which I'm really interested to see the outcomes of. But most of what I share with people who are thinking about a career change is, first of all, do whatever you need to do to get yourself into a place where you're financially comfortable enough that you can think about fulfilling work, not just needing a job to keep the wolf from the door.
Yeah.
Secondly, take the bed off the monster. Have a good look at what your financial situation actually is, because then at least you know what you're working with. And thirdly, don't let assumptions guide your decision making. So if you don't yet know, am I going to have to retrain? How much does retraining cost? What is the average salary of this career that I want to do? Go and gather that data, because so often people's financial fears in career change are rooted in the assumption that you can either do what you love or get paid, and the two don't come hand in hand. And actually, we see a lot of people who make career changes to even better paid roles than they were in previously. And that's something not many people consider.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think people think, oh, I'm going to take a step back or a step down. And actually, with our academy, people often are much better in terms of their earnings potential and what they end up earning. So as to become a financial advisor, you're paid for the advice that you give, but you're also building a business. So you're building capital value, which possibly isn't possible in an employed role somewhere else. So
Absolutely.
often they are, even though if they've come from some very successful career previously, in 10 years, it might take 10 years if they were particularly successful before, but they will have surpassed it. Some people, they'll surpass it in 1 year or 2 years. Others, it might take longer. I really like that as a concept. So you can be more, have a more fulfilling career and also earn more money than you used to. And it's that Japanese ikigai.
Mm-hmm.
So find what you love, find what somebody's willing to pay for, what you're good at, etc. And there's your ideal career. But I guess it takes the help of somebody to get you to find out what that is for you. So what would be your single most important piece of advice for listeners who are looking to make a switch of their own but don't know where to start?
Oh, I should really have an answer to this prepared, because people ask me a lot and I've never got a single thing. I think if I was going back to that version of myself who was feeling really stuck and lost, the one thing that I would wish for her most is to have people around her. So I think I might aim for that as my single biggest piece of advice. And I don't necessarily mean that in terms of networking. I mean talking to people who have made career changes so that you can see that it is possible, and learning from how they went about it, starting to ease that feeling of like, am I crazy for wanting to do this? Is this impossible, or is it actually something that normal people like me can do? And then looking for people who can play those roles that are really important whenever you're trying to make any kind of big life change. Like, who do you know who's basically just a hug on legs that you can go to in those moments when you are chewing all the skin off around your nails and wondering if ever anything's ever going to happen for you? And who do you know who's excellent at project managing other people that you can hire as an accountability buddy from your life? Like, the balm of other people's support is so powerful, particularly at the start of a career change where there's so much uncertainty and so much fear. So I think that would be the starting point for anybody that is listening today who's thinking about doing this, is go and seek out people who can play those kinds of roles in your life and share what you're thinking about with them.
We have a saying actually at the Academy, it's BBQ, be brave quicker. So those conversations that you might be a bit nervous about, finding this inner support system of people around you, and just have the conversation. Because we said right at the beginning, when people are asked for their help, it's actually quite flattering, and they're usually very willing to help. So be brave, go and have some conversations and find your cheerleaders. So what have you got going on in your life right now? What is next on the horizon for you?
I mean, right now I'm landing in the Highlands and trying to figure out which way is up. I'm unpacking a lot of boxes. I'm making a big mess. So that's primary focus. I've had a project ticking over in the background for quite a long time, where I'm working on a book about wonder and how wonder can be created and constructed in everyday life. So that's kind of giving my brain something to chew over. And I've noticed over the past year or so a real curiosity about actually getting away from computer screens and starting to do a little bit more work connected to nature. So I'm interested in the intersection of burnout for people and getting into nature and getting away from workplaces. A lot of the people I speak to who have made successful shifts are really celebratory about the fact that they had the chance to take a bit of a circuit break from their day-to-day work lives and get out into nature in order to be able to see what they were dealing with more clearly. So there's something bubbling on that front. But the thing that I can always be certain of with me is that there is a new project on the horizon, and it's going to be pretty different from the one that came before. So I'm as excited as you are to find out what it looks like.
Fantastic. Well, we can't wait to hear and follow whatever that is. The book sounds amazing. And I resonate very much with that, getting into nature. I'm working from home today, and opposite my house, I'm very lucky, is a forest. But I very rarely walk out into it. So I need to do it more often. So that's a good sign for me to get outside more often. So thank you so much, Natasha. We'll put in the show notes how people can get hold of you, but how would you recommend they get hold of you if they want to find you?
Yeah, wonderful. The best place is through Careershifters. So you can go to careershifters.org. You can check out all of the workshops, the content that I write, our Launchpad course, and of course, get in touch with me or anybody else on the team that way.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on The Switch.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
In this episode, we've been discussing thriving in the unknown, battling imposter syndrome, and leaning into your own purpose when navigating a direction shift. If you enjoyed listening, please make sure to check out our other episodes, like, review, and share. Thank you for listening.